Day 2 of Daily Pods. Rube, how you doing?
Doing well. Having a blast. Super Bowl week.
Got some sleep last night. I'm feeling good now. You know, that first day, like the night before we left, I was restless a little bit. I was excited to get here, so I'm caught up on sleep. I didn't have another Subway sandwich today.
Dave's caught up on sleep.
I did better today. I got good food.
Good.
I'm having a much better day 2 than day 1.
What'd you have?
I had a great chicken sandwich. Yeah, last night got some good food, some shrimp etouffee.
I heard it was good.
It was very good. Yeah. I enjoyed it.
I had a little gumbo.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, it was delicious.
You got to do it while you're down here. You got
have
to go
to.
to the gumbo, jambalaya, etouffee.
Yeah.
All right. We have a lot to talk
Good
about
eatings.
today. Today's going to be a fun one because it's before we go to media night, and we want to kind of go through some of the cool stories of this Philadelphia Eagles team because there's a lot of them, a lot of individual guys who have like kind of crazy stories and career arcs up to this point. And we want to highlight some of those and kind of look back at their seasons. We also have a bunch of questions to get to from you guys. We're trying to catch up. You guys are flooding that email inbox way quicker than we can get rid of them. So if we don't read your email, we apologize. We're trying to get to as many of those as possible. But Rube, there's been some NFL.
And I will give you a hint. If you ask a question that's so we got a lot of repeat, like duplicate questions, but if you ask a question that nobody else is going to ask, you have a better chance of getting it read because nobody else would ask it.
Yeah, I like that. That's good advice. Some NFL news, and we're going to get ahead of this question before we get it in. I'm sure it's already in the inbox.
Sure.
But Myles Garrett requested a trade out of Cleveland. Should the Eagles try to trade for him? This is a blanket answer for every team in the NFL. Yeah, you should. I don't know what it would cost. I don't know how feasible it would be, but Howie Roseman's Howie Roseman, and you always pick up the phone.
Yeah, and you know he's going to do his due diligence, at least reach out to the Browns and kind of get a sense of what it would take. I mean, there's the question of assets, there's the question of salary, what kind of contract he would want. I think he's signed for 2 more years, so you get a new deal with him. He's 29, so he's still obviously playing as well as he ever has. The dude gets 14 to 18 sacks every year. And he just happens to match up with a really big area of need, maybe the Eagles' biggest area of need going into the offseason. Sweat's unsigned. We don't know what BG's going to do. Bryce Hoff has been a failure so far. So there's certainly a lot of questions at edge, and makes sense.
Yeah, and we know he kind of has a relationship with some of the Eagles. They've practiced against the Browns a couple of times in recent years, so he has familiarity with Lane Johnson and Jordan. A lot of those guys have spent time together. Look, I don't know how feasible it is. I don't know what it would cost, but yeah, it's fun to think about because it does line up from a need perspective, and also it lines up from like he wants to go to a team where he feels like he can compete, and he hasn't been able to do that in Cleveland. And we should mention that Andrew Berry worked here in Philadelphia under Howie Roseman. He has said he's not trading him, but we'll see if that turns.
They always say that.
Yeah, well, it's good. It's a good strategy.
Yeah.
You don't say, we're going to trade this guy, and then you get nothing for him. But we'll see if that ends up being, a situation that can last, or if they do end up having to trade him.
Yeah, I mean, they would take on, something like $35-36 million in dead cap money if they did it. But if the assets are right, they would do it. And I think that is kind of always the case. If you get offered enough, you'll trade somebody. But a lot of things would have to fall into place for it to happen. It's not likely, but it's fun to think about. It's fun to think about.
Now, the Eagles would be behind a little bit in terms of their first-round pick that they could give up if it's next year, because they'd have either 31 or 32, and the other team's going to have more, so they'd have to find a way to sweeten that. But, yeah, I would never say never. It's probably unlikely. There are a lot of teams that are going to be competing, and we don't even know if he's going to get traded. But, man, could you imagine him on this defense?
Yeah, and the parallels between Saquon and Myles Garrett are really, really extensive. Garrett was drafted in 17, Saquon in 18, but they both won one playoff game with their initial team, both on the road. Neither one ever made the playoffs other than that. I think Cleveland made it twice under Stefanski, but lost in the first round. But there's a lot of parallels. Guys who are the best or among the best at their position who have never played for a good team. And it was a really cool scene, and I think I we've talked about this after the joint practice in Berea 2 years ago when Myles Garrett and Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson all just stayed at midfield after practice, just talking craft, talking about pass rushing and blocking and pass rush moves, and it was really cool to watch. And you spoke to Myles after that, but that was a really cool scene.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that necessarily means he wants to be here, but why wouldn't he? He's never been on a good team. He's been with the Browns, won 2 playoff games since the franchise kind of the Browns moved to Baltimore, and then they started new Browns, which is weird. And the Browns kind of kept the old Browns records, but the Ravens don't count the Browns records, even though it's the same franchise. It's weird. But, love to see it.
I love that you got there talking about Myles Garrett.
Got back.
I don't know if you did.
Tried.
You teleported back to the conversation we were having. It's like a broader topic, though, because it's the Eagles are going to be an attractive destination.
Yeah.
And they already were, I think. It's why Saquon wanted to be here. It really does matter. And it's not like you're going to be able to pay guys way less than market value, but it does give you a leg up in free agency that guys want to come here to play because they think it's going to be a successful team and a chance to go deep into the playoffs. And the way the Eagles are set up, no one thinks this is a one-year thing. I know they had a bad year in 23, but to get the 2 Super Bowls in 3 years, bad for their.
I mean, they were 10-1 at one point, but kind of got ugly after that. But and I mean, he even said in his statement that he released, that he put out on social media, Myles Garrett, that my goal when I started playing football wasn't to go to Canton; it was to go to a Super Bowl. So he's going to go to Canton. I mean, that's a done deal.
Yeah, it's a pretty close drive from Cleveland.
It is. Yeah. It's not far. But, when you look at the success of this team, there's 2 places. If you want the best odds to go to a Super Bowl, you either sign with the Chiefs or you sign with the Eagles at this point. That's where they are.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We just want to talk about that a little bit because we knew we were going to get a bunch of questions about it. But let's kind of flip gears a little bit. We talked about all the great stories on this team. I have a list of 11 of them in front of me, and there could have been more. Really, there's a ton of great stories on this team. They're in no particular order. They were just kind of the way I thought of them.
Okay.
The first one on my list is Zach Bond becoming a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. It's unbelievable, and now he's back in New Orleans where his career sputtered. It never really got going as the best linebacker in football.
Yeah, and we talked about this a little yesterday, I think, but it's really one of the great stories in Eagles history. It really is. It's unprecedented for a player to go from where he was to where he is, and everybody involved, and really mainly Howie and Vic, just deserve so much credit for the vision they had for the player and the understanding of his abilities that nobody else really understood, and just what he could do, what kind of player he could be. I mean, if the Saints had any sense of that, they wouldn't have let him go because you could get him for almost minimum wage. So it really is remarkable. And, there's times when you talk to Zach where he's a really confident guy. He knew he could be a good player, but sometimes you just talk to him, he's like, I just can't believe all of this. And it's a really cool story. One of the best.
Yeah, it almost seems like Zach Bond sees both sides of it. Like, he's confident in his abilities. He believes that he is deserving of being a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. On the other side of that, he's like, how am I in this conversation? Like, how did I get here? It's pretty remarkable. And you think back to his time in New Orleans, they have DeMario Davis, and maybe if they didn't have DeMario Davis, they would have tried Zach Bond a little bit more.
Yeah.
At inside backer. You never know how that goes. He's been a good player.
Well, Zach talks about him all the time.
Yeah, I'm sure he learned a lot from him. And kind of a weird career, too, because he's someone who got a lot better later in his career. Right. His great stretch has happened at kind of the tail end of his career. So for Zach Bond, who barely got to play on defense his first 4 years, he probably looks at that, too. I can have this whole second act of my career and start stacking some of these really great seasons.
Yeah, it was funny when Zach found out I was an All-Pro voter, which means I vote for Defensive Player of the Year as well. He asked if he was on my ballot. I said, yeah. And he said, well, who else did you vote for? And I said, Myles Garrett, Trey Hendrickson, Patrick Surtain. I'm it just was absurd to even mention the names together, but he belongs there.
It tells you how great of a season he had that he got the All-Pro nod, and he was the number one vote getter because, like, he's not a big name. He's not a household name. He's not someone that, like everyone else who, for the most part, makes All-Pro and who's in that Defensive Player of the Year conversation, we knew that they were going to be in those conversations before the year started. For him to come out of nowhere and still get the accolades tells you that, like, it was that good of a season.
Yeah.
It was, like, undeniable.
It's really hard to get that kind of recognition your first year as a good player, as an elite player. Usually you have to stack a couple years, you know, and then you start getting recognized. For him to, I wasn't even sure he was going to make the Pro Bowl. Obviously he deserved it, but it's hard to get these kind of honors when you don't have that, you know, that history of stacking seasons and building up to that point. I'm really surprised. I give the voters credit for doing their homework and understanding what kind of year he had.
And, like, he filled out the stat sheet, not just with tackles, which can sometimes be a little misleading.
Sure.
You're making all your tackles 8 yards downfield, fine.
And it's not really an official stat. Everyone keeps it differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not official, but it's close to official. People count them. But he's getting the forced fumbles have been unbelievable. The sacks, like everything he does, he like those big important plays, those impact plays he made all year.
Yeah, fumble recoveries, tackles for loss. I mean, the game wouldn't go by without him making 2 or 3 of those plays.
Every single game, it's unbelievable. He'll do it again in the Super Bowl.
He will.
Win or lose, he's going to make a big play. The next one on my list is Mekhi Becton.
Yeah, I thought he was going to be first on your list.
They're in no particular order.
Yeah. Really, you know, we talked so much about Zach Ball and his story, but I mean, Becton's is just as intriguing, or almost, I guess. The guy was a first-round bust as a tackle.
You could argue it's more intriguing.
In some ways, it maybe is, and you know, nobody wanted him. I mean, he was on the street. Anybody could have signed him. Nobody thought this guy's a guard except Jeff Stoutland, and here he is, just played at a really high level, and he's going to make a bag, as the kids say these days.
That made me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, I know. I wasn't happy with it.
I don't like it.
But he's going to make a lot of money. I don't know if it'll be here or not, but to go from where he was to where he is, and he gets really emotional talking about it. And you know, he was saying the other day, just Jeff Stoutland is the first person that ever believed in me, and that's a huge thing.
Yeah, it's wild, like, to see the emotion when they clinched the division. I mean, this is a guy who had, one winning season with the Jets? Like, it was bad. And, like, to see how far he's come, and it was a bad situation with him. Like, he clearly didn't get along with Robert Saleh. It was a bad, dysfunctional relationship. And
that never happens with the Jets.
Well, yeah, I mean, but, well, like, look, we don't really know what happened there, but he got painted as this guy who was like a malcontent, who was lazy, who wasn't in shape. And look, maybe some of that was true, some of it wasn't. I can tell you the Eagles haven't had any of those issues with him.
No.
Oh, actually, no, he never had a winning season. I knew he didn't. The best was a 7-win season.
No, all those guys, Saquon, Becton, and you know, what we were talking about, Myles Garrett, just guys who've never won anything. And it's got to be just incredible. I mean, I think Zach Baldwin was on one playoff team. To come here and just have this kind of success, it's got to be so sweet for all those guys. But yeah, Mekhi, and I think you have to. It's a little humbling, you know. If you're an offensive lineman, you want to be a tackle. I think, you know, you want to be. They get paid more. It's a more prestigious position.
Although
I
that
guess.
Guard market kind of exploded in this last offseason.
But he like everyone else on this team, he kind of put himself aside and did what's best for the team. And he's been a really good guard.
Yeah, he's been really good. I think at times he's been like just dominant. There are other times where he looks like a guy who's learning how to play guard, but overall, like, he's had a really good season. And there's like just one of those stories would be good. Like, he moves from tackle to guard, or he resurrects his career. The fact that he did both in the same season is pretty remarkable. And a season where they're going to the Super Bowl. Yeah,
it's something else.
The next one is a very similar one. It's Saquon Barkley leaving the Giants and having the best year running backs ever had.
It really is. It really is the best year running backs ever had. I think Jim Brown in 58 might argue, but I'll go with Saquon. Yeah, Jim Brown's he's not watching the podcast. But yeah, it's, again, he won one playoff game in 6 years. He had one season with the Giants where he won more than 6 games. 6 games. His first 4 years with the Giants, they won 18 games. He's won 17 this year. I mean, it's just it's amazing. And I think when they signed him, there were two schools of thought. There was a school of thought that he's been hurt. He hasn't been that productive. I think over the last 4 years, he averaged 3.9 yards a carry since his second year, since his third year. And there were people that I was a little skeptical. I mean, I admit it. I didn't know how much of a factor having this incredible O-line, being in a winning culture, having an elite quarterback. He's never had any of these things. I've said a million times, he only had one teammate on offense his last 5 years with the Giants that made a Pro Bowl, and that was the tight end, whose name I forget.
Was that Waller?
No, it was the other tight end in 2020.
Evan Ingram. It was Evan Ingram,
yeah. He's forgettable. He didn't even have a good year, but he never had an offensive lineman make a Pro Bowl, never had a receiver, never had a quarterback. So he comes here, and you put all those things together, and he stays healthy. I think Nick and the training staff have handled him beautifully as far as making sure he gets rest and making sure he's not overworked and getting him out of games when they're up 21. Which that never happened with the Giants. They were never up 21. And it all has kind of come together in this just miracle season. And, I mean, to see that talent behind that offensive line, you're going to have something historic happen, and it did.
I think my favorite thing about him might be just that he realizes how special the season he's having is. You know what I mean? Like, he understands the history of the game, and like it means something to him. He wants to be mentioned with those great players. So It's kind of fun to cover a great season where the subject is acutely aware of that great season and where it stacks all time.
No, I think it's a really good point. A lot of guys won't do that. Mm-hmm. A lot of guys won't kind of.
They don't do it because sometimes they don't really understand the history of it.
Yeah, maybe that's part of it. I mean, he's a real student of the game. Certainly. Aware of TD and Eric Dickerson and all the great ones that came before him, and understands his place, and I like that.
Next one?
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like, there's so many of these. Isaiah Rodgers.
Yeah.
This guy was suspended all of last season, and now he's playing a huge role on a Super Bowl team. And you would think, okay, he's a backup outside corner. He probably didn't play that much. No, he's played a ton this year.
Yeah, because Slay's been banged up like every other week. And Rodgers is the guy that comes in. That was a huge fumble return that he had, recovery and return a couple weeks ago. He gave him some plays, but I think he's a really good backup corner. And I keep saying this, but the hypocrisy of the NFL suspending somebody for gambling, for placing bets, when the NFL is built on betting,
I mean, I don't think I understand why they have to do it.
I guess. I don't know. If he had done it somewhere else, then it's not a.
You can't have players betting on football.
I just think I don't know. I guess so. It just bothers me because the league is unabashed in their connection with gambling. So he gambled and you kick him out of the league. It's just I don't know. I don't like it. But the point is, this is a guy that anybody could. And again, Howie, signed him early. He couldn't be in the building.
There was no downside to signing him. That's a good example of Howie winning on the margins.
Yeah. There's nothing to lose. Didn't have to pay him last year. He was down in Florida working out for a year, and it was really cool. He told us, I think the first time we talked to him, that he constructed his days when he was down in Florida as if he was with a team. So he would have a workout. He would lift when he would have lifted with the team, and he would work out when he would have worked out with the team, and he would have watched film when he would have been. I really like that. I think that's just that kind of connected him to the routine. And man, from the start of training camp, he's just looked really good.
Yeah, and I think it was really helpful for him to have a team. Even though he couldn't be in the building, couldn't have contact with any coaches or front office, he had a team. And there's nothing that prevents you from having contact with your teammates.
Right.
So I think he felt a part of it, and it's a little poetic that their season ended in Tampa, which is where he lives in the offseason and where he'd been training all year. I got to think that meant a lot to him, knowing that a team took a chance on him and they were willing to wait. and I still don't understand why the Colts gave up on him.
Very
there was
quickly.
no downside.
Yeah.
Like, there was no reason for them to cut him.
Yeah.
He had played a lot of good football for them.
Yeah. No, I think he's a solid guy. It'd be interesting to see if they keep him, if he wants to go somewhere else. And I think it's all kind of tied into what Slay does, if Slay retires or if they move on. We'll see. I have no sense of what's going to happen with Slay. He's played well.
I think Isaiah Rodgers could be a starter in the league.
I do too.
And Slay does as well.
I also think Keely Ringo's an intriguing player.
Still really young.
Really young, really handsy. He's got to get past that, but he's got some ability too.
Yeah. And my other favorite Isaiah Rodgers thing this year is when he launched that player into Cooper DeJean because he thought it would give them a penalty.
Yeah, well, it's not always all positive, but yeah, I like the player, and
I think a lot of people probably forgot about that moment.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorite moments of the season.
It was interesting.
Poor Cooper DeJean out there for the first time, and his teammate just launches a body into him.
That was
good.
That was different. What else you got?
Next one here, Nick Sirianni. I mean, this guy was nearly fired. The Eagles let him hang out in the wind for 9 days before they bring him back. They don't even announce that they're bringing him back. They just announced his press conference to address the end of the season, and we know he's coming back. To go from that, and then the 2-2 start. Like, we're on this podcast in September going, I don't know if he's going to make it to the end of this season. To now be here is pretty remarkable.
It is, and he's handled the situation beautifully. He didn't. Yeah, I think he's had a great year, and he never wavered from the way he does things, the way he connects with players. He stayed true to himself. A lot of people don't like him because of that, and I get that. I think people outside the building, I think the ratio of people that like him to don't like him is really low, but everybody in that building just loves him, and his players love him, and he connects in a way that it kind of reminds me of high school, or like not even college as much as high school. Just it's very, like he's got all the cliches and all the stories and all the, the little truisms and memes and all that stuff, and they buy in and they listen because he's so genuine about it. I think that's how he gets it across. I remember talking to him right after he got the job and asking him, like, how do you get NFL players to buy into this whole, like, connecting and core values? And he's like, if you're genuine about it, they're going to buy in. And he was right.
Yeah, it's funny because we talk about the high school stuff, and I think a lot of people would take that as like a negative. There'd be like a negative connotation to it. I bet you Nick would be proud of that. He's the son of a high school football coach. His brother coached in high school. Like, I think he wants to connect to his players the way a high school coach connects to their players. And that's kind of rare in the NFL. And I think it's hard to do in the NFL because there's money at play and there's politics at play. But if you can kind of get down to the pureness of the game, which I think he tries to do, then I think those connections are stronger.
Oh, I don't think there's any question. And I think he would love that. He would love hearing that. And I think, he talks about it so much. And Mount Union, Division III football is kind of an extension of high school, kind of.
Larry Karras is going to come down here and crack you for that.
No, I don't mean that in a negative way. I went to a Division III school that had, a football team that did well. And it's good football, but it's not Georgia,
Me too, by the way.
Georgia, Alabama. Yeah, Glassboro State, right?
Rowan.
Oh, it was Rowan by then?
Yeah.
Okay.
How long ago do you think I went?
I don't know. I'm not clear on what year they changed over. I'm not really clear on that. But yeah, he makes it work, and I don't think a lot of guys could do that.
Yeah, and man, we know the rest of the country hates him.
Hates him.
I love the story. He's told us this story a bunch. He told us again on Saturday, but his brother married a girl from a different, like a rival high school, and they're at a family event, and her family is telling his brother, like, man, we all hate Nick. like years later, after like he had played against them, they all still hated him, and you kind of understand it, and it makes you understand why him and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson get along so well. They're kind of similar.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter. He doesn't care. He doesn't care who likes him, who hates him, as long as the people in that building like him and respect him, and they do.
Next one is another coach, Vic Fangio.
It's a good one.
He kind of waited his whole career to get back to Philadelphia, and now he's back, and he has a number one defense.
Yeah, it's really remarkable, especially considering where this defense was at the end of last year, really for the second half of the season. They were pretty good early, but all the new pieces, 2 rookies starting in the secondary. By the way, Eagles are the first team with 2 rookie cornerbacks starting in a Super Bowl since the 49ers in 1981 with Ronnie Lott, who was still a cornerback then, and Eric Wright. So I thought that was, and they both had long careers. Obviously, Ronnie Lott's a Hall of Famer. Eric Wright played like 10 years, made 2 Pro Bowls. But all the new pieces and putting it all together and making it work. I didn't think they had a chance to be a good defense until maybe halfway through the season. I thought the offense was going to carry them. It came together so fast, especially in the secondary with all the new pieces. Came together so fast, and they had a chemistry, and they're also the youngest defense in the league. And they had a chemistry that I don't know how they got there. From 7 new starters on defense, an entirely new coaching staff, entirely new coaching staff. They somehow got there, and Vic's a miracle worker. I'm dazzled by what he's done.
And then there were all the whispers out of Miami that his players and him couldn't connect. They were butting heads. He comes here. His players love him. In Philly. It was very funny. The other day it was raining, and I'm walking into the locker room, and Vic is holding his shoes, walking barefoot. It's like there's such a grandfatherly figure, but he's also still a heck of a coach.
He is, and he loves Philadelphia. He loves being here. I covered him with the Stars, the USFL Stars, way back in the day. He was on Jim Mora's staff, Jim Mora's senior staff, and he's always loved the city. He was back here kind of briefly in 22 as a consultant type thing, but
and then we know the way the timing worked out. He would have been here in 23 if the whole Gannon situation went differently. It was so funny that the second we knew he was leaving Miami, everyone knew he was coming.
It was like 5 minutes later. Yeah, it was crazy how fast that turned out. I think he calls a great game. I think he gets the most out of his players. I think he really understands what they do well and what positions to put them in. And number 1 defense in the league. They were number 26 last year. It's the biggest jump to number 1 ever.
It's pretty amazing.
Ever.
All right, let's take.
I didn't have to go back too far though, because before there were 26 teams, I didn't have to. I have to go back to the 40s, 50s, when I just sharing my process with everybody.
Yeah, I'm glad. Okay, we're going to take a break. On the other side, some more cool storylines from this Eagles team and a bunch of emails from you guys.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we've got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store and NissanUSA.com today.
All right, we're back on the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan. We're in our cozy little corner at Radio Row here in New Orleans. Ruben, Frank, Dave, Zangaro. We're still looking at the great storylines of this Eagles 2024 season. The next one on my list is Oren Burks, and this is a relatively new one, but to see Oren Burks step in for an injured Nakobe Dean the last couple of weeks and play at the level he has is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, and I was wrong about him. I didn't think he had it in him to play at this level, and he's been really good. And I knew he was physical. I knew he was a good tackler, but he's hung in there in coverage, which I didn't foresee. He's another guy on a 1-year contract, and considering we don't know if Nakobe's going to be ready, when he'll be ready, you'd like to see him maybe re-sign Oren Burks. His contract's up as well. So, he was a guy who was just an afterthought when they signed him. Maybe play some special teams. It's funny because last year, right, with the 49ers, he kind of had to.
He played in the Super Bowl when Dre Greenlaw got hurt.
Yeah. He got hurt running off the field?
Running on the field.
Yeah,
he took a hop step and tore his Achilles.
Yeah. So 2 Super Bowls in a row for Oren Burks, and he's been really solid. Yeah. He's got 4 forced fumbles. He hasn't played that much.
It's amazing. And look, he didn't play particularly well in the Super Bowl last year, but he got thrown into a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
This year, he has a little bit of a runway. I think that'll help.
There's no question about it. Yeah.
The next one on my list is C.J. Gardner-Johnson. The way things ended with him and the Eagles after the 22 season, it's pretty remarkable that both sides kind of swallowed their pride, went forward, brought him back, and he's been really important to the fabric of this team.
Yeah, and I give both sides credit for. I mean, it didn't get super ugly, but it got a little.
There were some ugly moments.
There were some ugly moments.
CJ kind of taking shots at the fans. And then you had his agent tweeting out numbers that meant nothing.
Yeah, and that was the agent. But he's even better than CJ GJ version 1. I mean, he's been a more physical player. He's so around the ball. He's got 12 interceptions. He missed 4 games 2 years ago, or 5 games, 4 games. So he's played, 30 games. He's got 12 interceptions as an Eagle, which is crazy. On a team that doesn't get a lot of interceptions over the last few years. So he brings so much energy, so much life. Just obviously a good player, but he's also just a fun guy to have around.
Yeah, all the things we talked about when they signed him that he needed to bring to this team, he has. And you're like, obviously, if he wasn't a good player, none of it would matter. But he is a good player, and then he brings something to the attitude of this team. Now, he got probably a little carried away one game. Maybe he didn't really get carried away. He got thrown out, which you can't have. But, man, I always go back to that 49ers game last year and then walking through their warm-ups. If CJ's on the team, that doesn't happen.
Yeah,
it just flat out does not happen.
Yeah.
So, I think he means something to this team. There's that really cool clip from the last Eagles Unscripted where he breaks down the team and he says, hey, guys, I know I talk a lot of crap, but I do it because I know you're all out there to back me up. Like, that's a cool moment. And you see Jalen kind of smiling as he's saying it. I think CJ still brings all that attitude, but I also think he's grown up just a little bit too.
I think that's fair, yeah.
The next one is Nolan Smith. This is a guy that a lot of people were ready to write off after one somewhat disappointing rookie season. Man, he's been unbelievable after the bye week.
Yeah, 1 sack in his first 21 career games and 10.5 in his last, let me do the math. He didn't play in the Giants game, right? So he would have played
15.
Plus 3 playoff games.
No, it's 15.
Oh, 15 total games. So he's got 10.5 sacks in 15 games, right? On a team that, Josh Sweat's been kind of uneven. BG's been hurt. They don't get a lot of sacks. Bryce Huff hasn't been a factor. They don't get a lot of sacks, and he's been he just flipped the switch during the bye week. And we can come up with a list of things that happened during the bye week. I think he just wrote about that. He's one of them, and boy, they've needed him, and he's come up big.
It's amazing. So Brandon Graham has the most sacks in Eagles playoff history. He has 5.5 in 11 career playoff games.
Yeah.
Number 2 on that list is Nolan Smith. He has 4.5 in 4 games.
Yeah, and 4 this year is the most ever by an Eagle in a single postseason. I mean, he's got more postseason sacks than Reggie White as an Eagle, Clyde Simmons. And it's really something. And we've seen guys, and Reddick, I think, had 3.5. We've seen guys who have big regular seasons and they don't produce in the postseason. I mean, Nolan's been maybe even better in the playoffs. I mean, he's been so good. And even when he's not getting sacks, I mean, he's relentless in his pressure against the run. He just plays hard all the time. He's a really fun player to watch. You just kind of watch him and something is going to happen.
The next one is another edge guy, Josh Sweat. The offseason wasn't great to him. He had to take a pay cut. He's on the trade block. He comes back and he's a starter for this team. Now, he has trailed off a little bit late in the season, but he gave them a lot of really good snaps this year.
He did. He's become a really streaky player.
Mm-hmm.
But middle of the year, I mean, he was really, really good. And, for a while there, they had Nolan and Sweaty both playing at a really high level and getting a lot of pressure. If they can get back to that on Sunday, that's going to really serve this team well. Yeah,
and, Sweat's a guy who's been here since 2018. I think he probably thought he was gone after last year.
I did.
It looked like they might move on from Reddick and Sweat. And you're thinking, well, they can't move on from both of these guys. They don't have anyone else to really replace them. So I think it was a big deal that they were able to figure out a way to keep Josh Sweat this year.
Yeah, we'll see what happens next. His contract's also up.
The last one on my list, the Georgia guys. To have all of these guys now playing, well, maybe not all of them, but most of them playing significant roles on a championship-level team after doing it in college together, it's really cool. And people were making fun of Howie Roseman early on when those picks maybe weren't working out the way they expected. I guess you just draft Georgia players. Well, yeah, I guess that did work, huh?
Yeah, and they bring something to the locker room, I think, as a group. They're so close, and I think that the people around them kind of gravitate. They all have great personalities. And I'm certainly including Nakobe in that, even though he's hurt right now. But yeah, they just bring a certain energy and a certain, obviously, playmaking, but just in the locker room. I mean, they're, whether Jordan Davis is singing, Nolan Smith sings all the time. They're just bring a lot of life to the team.
I know Jalen Hurts has talked about the Georgia guys,
yeah.
And I think he sees some parallels between the Alabama program and the Georgia program, just two powerhouse SEC programs, and Kirby Smart runs a tight ship down there at Georgia. So I think these guys were kind of ready to become professionals. Whereas, like, maybe if you're at a different school, you might be, but you might not be. Like, these guys were ready to be pros. Maybe they weren't ready to shine on the field right away, but they were going to do what it took.
Yeah, they just seem like they belong from day one.
Yeah. All right, those were the storylines I came up with. Anything else that I left out? There's so many.
Yeah, no, those are all good ones.
Yeah. All right, before we get to the emails, we want to pop it up there on the screen. If you have one for us, it's eagleeye@nbcuni.com. That's eagleeye@nbcuni.com. If you're watching on YouTube, you have that QR code. You can scan it, send it right from your phone. Let's get into it. First one up here from Dave, different Dave, good name, different Dave. Greetings from Gonzales, Louisiana. My wife and I moved here from Bethlehem, PA 14 years ago. Sure missed the Lehigh training camps. It took me about 7 years to find Eagle Eye, and I've only missed a handful of pods since. I know I speak for a lot of relocated Eagles fans when I say your efforts mean so much to us. It's like we're back home in PA talking with friends about the team we love. I really enjoy the banter between the two of you, in particular the tangents that Rube takes us on, only to be brought back on topic by Dave.
That's never happened.
To be at the media day in the Superdome on Monday. Hope to see you there and thank you in person. So maybe we will see you tonight, Dave. Few questions here. First, I don't understand the A.J. Brown fine. It was obvious that Lattimore wasn't even trying to stop the play. He just wanted to take shots at Brown. Lattimore has a history of this here in his time in New Orleans. Did you see that A.J. Brown got fined?
Yeah.
He got his helmet. He pushed it off.
Yeah.
I think they both should have been fined,
right.
But I understand why A.J. was fined.
Yeah.
Number two, would you consider this the best Eagles team ever? And if they win this thing, would this be one of the all-time great teams, period? Our weakest player could be our kicker, and I love Jake.
I mean, they're up there. 1960, 48-49, those teams were, 48-49, they won back-to-back NFL championships by shutout. There's only been 5 shutouts total in Super Bowl plus NFL championship games. 2 of them were the Eagles in 48 and 49 back-to-back. So, but, they'd have to be in the conversation.
How about Super Bowl era? Like, where do they stack up against? Like, obviously, there's only one team that won one, the 17 team. And I don't know what the right word is. It's not fluke, but that team just had, like, some kind of magic to it. I think this team is more talented.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. We'll see what happens Sunday, and I'm sure that'll be a topic if they win.
Yeah. And the third question here is, Kellen Moore is said to make tendencies to break them when it counts. He said that. Could you see Jahan Dotson making a few key plays in the Super Bowl? I've seen plays where he is almost ignored.
No.
You don't think so?
No.
Percent chance. It's not 0.
No, it's not 0. I think Jalen likes throwing to Devontae, AJ, and Dallas, and why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think his best chance would probably be like a scramble drill.
Yeah, like the touchdown. Yeah.
In the back of the end zone. Yeah, something breaks down. Jahan keeps working, which he does. And these guys have had enough time together. There are scramble drill rules where kind of where you have to get to a certain spot and get open. I could see a play like that.
It could happen. I'm not counting on it.
Give me a percentage. I'll give you my percentage.
6.
Oh, I'd go higher than that. I'd go like 14.
Okay.
Yeah. Next one is from JoJo. Dave and Rube, the Eagles have been a pass-heavy team for the last 20 years or so. I always assume this decision to pass first was informed by analytics. What changed this year? How much influence does the analytics department have? Are there game decisions made by analytics that are different in the playoffs versus the regular season? Thanks from... Oh, this is actually Matt. Sorry. Matt.
Oh, what's up, Matt? Yeah, I think it was just they were throwing a lot the first 4 games and it wasn't going well. It wasn't working, and it was becoming apparent that Saquon was strength of the offense. And that's a decision they made during the bye week, that let's just ride him. But I think the reason they've been pass heavy over 20 years is because that's what Jeff Lurie wants. Obviously, Andy Reid was a big part of that. Chip Kelly, they actually ran a lot under Chip. They threw a lot under Doug. They've had they've had coaches who like to throw. They've had good quarterbacks, and it's a passing league. So, yeah.
I think it was just tough to ignore what was going to work for this team. And, yeah, I think in the perfect world, Jeffrey Lurie would want to have an offense that's on the cutting edge of the passing game. But that's one of the things I am curious to hear when we get to speak with Jeffrey is, like, has this season changed his outlook on offensive football? Because they've been so dominant running the ball.
Yeah, and I know what he would say if he was being honest. This is a once-in-a-lifetime running back, having a once-in-a-lifetime season behind a once-in-a-lifetime offensive line, and it's not going to look like this every year.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
But I also give them credit for leaning into something that's once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
Next question is...
And a lot of teams won't do that. A lot of coaches won't do that. They'll stick to that's not what we do. Andy ignored Brian Westbrook. Too much. There were times where, Westbrook, I think, was as talented as any running back in the league, and he would, they would throw 60 times and he'd have 12 carries, and it would be 12 carries for 78 yards, and it would drive people crazy. But, yeah, I give Nick and the staff credit for changing up and going with what's working.
Next question is from Chuck. Hi, Dave and Rube. Thanks for what is by far the best Eagles podcast out there. As a Philly native now living in Germany, you guys are my go-to source for Eagles news. No hype, no clickbait, just the facts. Appreciate it. My question is about Kellen Moore being the leading candidate for the Saints job. I get it that there are only 32 of these jobs, and if you're a coach in the NFL, being a head coach is the ultimate goal. However, not all coaching situations are equal. With the Saints' cap issues and QB uncertainty, if you're Kellen, do you take on that mess?
We took this question already. We read this exact question like a few days ago.
Okay.
I'm sure of it. Didn't we?
Okay.
Yeah, we did. I remember. It's a good question. He was asking if Kellen would stay with the Eagles as OC. Is that what he's getting at?
Oh, we already read that question, so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what the question was.
Yeah.
I don't remember us answering that.
Yeah, we did. It was. You don't get a lot of opportunities to be a head coach, and when you get it, you take it.
Okay. Next question is from David. Hi, I've never sent a question before, but want to hear you guys go over the whole season, game by game, and explain how you were feeling about the team. This season has been such an unusual one. It's not a Cinderella story, but you can't say we knew what we had until late in the season. And even then, when they won, I felt like they underperformed. What do you think? We're not going to do this today, but I think this would be fun at some point this week to kind of go through game by game, like after a certain loss, like what were you feeling early in the season, and then like which wins really hammered home the idea that this could be a great team.
Well, let me ask you this. Was there a specific point where you thought they had a chance to be really, really good that you remember? Like for me, it was the Bengals game. It was after the Bengals game.
That was a good one. Certainly the Rams game was a big one.
And those were both big road wins, double-digit against
and like
decent teams.
The way they ran against the Rams was just so dominant.
Yeah,
there were a few of those along the way. The Ravens game certainly won. Like that was one of the best teams in the league, and they were able to win that.
That was coming off the Rams game.
Quality wins this year.
9-2 against winning teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll do that later in the week.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Ruben, Dave, love the pod and excited to get them all week. Can you please explain how players are paid during the postseason? Is it based on their regular season contract, set rate, etc.? Curious how a long playoff run and even a Super Bowl victory benefit the players from a financial perspective.
It doesn't. They lose money. Yeah, they make less per week.
Yeah, they don't lose money.
Well, they lose money compared to, they make less per week. Some of them significantly less per week than they do. It's based on, there's a set amount that everybody on the team gets for each week that you advance.
I have it in front of me, actually. So for the wild card round, They're different amounts, around 50 grand a player. Divisional round is 54.5. Conference championship game is $77,000, and then the Super Bowl, the winning team this year gets $171,000, losing team $96,000.
So that's a lot of money, but compared to some of the contracts,
exactly.
Yeah,
for some of the lower level players, though, it's a nice chunk of change.
It is. Yeah.
For some of the guys, you're right. It's not anything near a regular season game check.
Yep.
Do a couple more here. Fellas, listening to this latest pod has me reminiscing on topics and pods from earlier in the year. We as a collective fan base appreciate all the inside access and storylines, so thanks for what you do. I think it's safe to say the group chat between Jalen, AJ, and Devin White titled Accountability has been deleted or inactive for some time, or maybe White removed Jalen and AJ and added Matty P perhaps. Enjoy a brew, safe travels to NOLA. That's from Matthew.
Appreciate it.
No question there, but it's kind of crazy though to think about, like, that was a big storyline in training camp, that Devin White's now like a big part of this team. He's going to be a leader of this defense.
Yeah.
Didn't last long.
Seems like 2 years ago.
It does. Next question is from Zach. Hey, Dave and Rube, I've been thinking a bit lately about the people who voice the Eagles for us fans. Obviously, that includes you two for many of us, but I was curious who you look up to when you cover the Eagles. Do you have a journalist in general who influenced your career, be it how you write, report, or just personally supporting your career growth? To me and maybe others, the voices of the Eagles are Merrill Reese and Ray Didinger, but I'm curious who else stands out to you guys given your proximity to Eagles media?
Yeah, I think we've been asked this before in the past. That's redundant, I know, before in the past. Phil Anastasia is the guy who had the biggest influence on me. He was at the Courier Post when I started covering the Eagles and went to the Inquirer later. Didn't do the Eagles for the Inquirer, he was doing other stuff, but when I started, there were some really, really strong beat writers. Tim Kawakami from the Daily News. I just learned so much from watching those guys and just trying to be like them. It took a while before I could pull it off, but those are. And I know he was one of your professors, right, at Glassboro State.
Yep.
Rowan, sorry. But yeah, those are a couple of them.
Okay.
Yeah. How about you?
No one. No, I didn't know Phil was an Eagles beat writer, but he certainly helped me. I think I've taken lessons from everyone, honestly. And that can be good lessons, bad lessons. Not to like.
Who are some of the people you got bad lessons
I'm
from?
not going to say that, but you see the way you want to do something, and you see the way you don't want to do something.
Yeah.
And it's not even necessarily like it's a bad thing, but it's like not the lane I want to be in.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I think they're all informative.
Yeah.
We'll do one more.
Yeah.
This last one from Leo. Hey, this is Leo from Norristown. My question is about Vic Fangio. I believe he mentioned that this will be his last coaching stop before the season. Do you believe he'll retire if we win the Super Bowl? And if so, who do you think would be a good replacement? I would love to have Rex Ryan as the DC because of how fun his past defenses were, and I believe he'll put our elite defenders in great positions for success, just like Vic Fangio. Appreciate your thoughts. Keep up the great work.
Yeah, I've covered enough people in that family to last a lifetime. I don't think Vic's going to retire.
I don't either. I think he's still enjoying it way too much.
Yeah. I think he really loves being here. I think he loves this job. He loves this team. He really likes the players. He seems to be going strong. I mean, he's healthy. He's the third oldest, or he would be the third oldest defensive coordinator to win a Super Bowl if they win, behind Wade Phillips, who we both covered, and Dick LeBeau. Pretty
good company there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, no doubt.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think he's about to retire. And, honestly, if he did, you have strong candidates in the building. I mean, I think Christian Parker would be a really strong candidate. I think Clint Hurt would be a strong candidate. I don't know if Bobby King would want to leave his linebacker post, but I think there are really strong candidates in the building. And with how that defense has played this year, it might make sense to just promote from within.
Have some continuity.
Mm-hmm.
Matty P's out there.
He's holding out.
Maybe bring him back for the last month.
Yeah, I like that. All right, if you have a question for us, it's Eagle Eye at NBC Uni. That's NBCUNI.com. QR code on the screen. This is where I remind everyone, if you enjoyed the Eagle Eye podcast, if you appreciate daily pods during Super Bowl week, do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. Rube, any final thoughts?
No, we're having a blast, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
All right, for Rube, I'm Dave. This has been Eagle Eye, presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you soon.